At 4 o'clock, ABC 10 News at 5 starts right now.
ABC 10 News starts now with breaking news.
A large crowd erupting into cheers after learning Derek Chauvin was found guilty in the murder of George Floyd. Inside the Minneapolis courthouse, a different scene. The former police officer showing no emotion while being taken into custody. Good evening, I'm Lindsay Pena.
And I'm Steve Atkinson. The jury came back with its verdict less than a full day after closing arguments. We have team coverage on this still breaking story. Let's begin with ABC's Rena Roy, who is in Minneapolis.
After 10.5 hours of deliberation, the jury has come to a verdict in the murder trial of Derek Chauvin.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty.
Convicted on all 3 charges, he showed no emotion as he was cuffed and taken back into custody.
For a high-profile case, this is a pretty fast verdict. When the world is watching, the jurors typically want to cross the T's and dot the I's and make it clear to the world that they very carefully considered the evidence.
Monday, jurors heard 6 hours of closing arguments from both sides after nearly 3 weeks of powerful testimony and supporting evidence. Prosecutors arguing Chauvin's action killed Floyd. The defense hoping to create reasonable doubt, saying his use of force was justified, blaming Floyd's drug and heart issues for his death.
Mr. Chauvin should be found not guilty of all counts.
What the defendant did to George Floyd killed him.
The diverse jury, ages ranging from 20s to 60s, 5 men and 7 women, 4 black, 6 white, and 2 self-identify as multiracial.
When there are no questions, when there are no clarifications asked by a jury for jury instructions, when you have nothing to read from the jury, a fast verdict like this indicates that there is a full agreement.
Security here in Minneapolis is stepped up with National Guard members deployed and scattered throughout the city. Security is also pretty tight in several major cities, including New York and Washington, D.C. Rena Roy, ABC News, Minneapolis.
Find the defendant guilty.
That was the reaction of several members of George Floyd's family. His older brother and sister and other relatives watched the verdict live from their home in Houston. Looks of tension gave way to relief as the verdicts on each count were read. And President Biden spoke about today's verdict just a short time ago. ABC 10 News anchor Derek Stahl is in the live center with his message. Derek.
Well, President Biden talked about the knee on the neck of justice for Black Americans and said today's verdict could be a giant step towards addressing systemic racism.
No one should be above the law. And today's verdict sends that message. But it's not enough. We can't stop here. In order to deliver real change and reform, we can and we must do more to reduce the likelihood that tragedies like this will ever happen and occur again.
Demonstrators marched in the streets of Minneapolis as the president spoke. The president called on Congress to pass the George Floyd Policing Act. That's legislation that has a host of reforms that supporters say will help combat police misconduct, excessive force, and racial bias. Here in San Diego, Mayor Todd Gloria called Derek Chauvin's actions a disservice to the police officers who nobly serve. And around 3:30 this afternoon, he took the unusual step of actually going on the police radio system and speaking directly to his officers.
So I want you to hear from me today. I know who you are. You are people who help complete strangers on the worst day in their life. You are people who believe in collaboration and community. You're people who put your lives on the line every single day to protect this city. I and the people of San Diego are grateful for your dedication and your service. With today's decision made, it is now time for all of us to come together to heal and to move forward.
Both the mayor and the president acknowledged the potential for violence and looting after this verdict, and they urged people to honor George Floyd's memory peacefully. In the Live Center, I'm Derek Stahl, ABC 10 News.
Let's hope that happens throughout the night. Derek, thank you. Joining us now to talk about today's verdict is criminal justice attorney David Shapiro. David, thanks for your expertise on this case. I want to ask you, first of all, I think everybody in America has had this conversation over the last couple of weeks, but as a defense attorney, how much of an uphill battle was this for the defense?
Well, Steve, thanks for having me on this monumental day. And what I could tell you is, as a defense attorney, this was a tough case. This was as tough as it gets, primarily because of the fact that what Derek Chauvin did to George Floyd, everyone saw. There was 9.5 minutes of cell phone video and body-worn camera of him kneeling on his upper back and neck and ultimately taking his life. So when there's that type of direct, concrete evidence against your client as a defense attorney, you're just really hoping realistically for a lesser verdict. And the jury did not deliver that by convicting him of all counts.
On that very point, David, in closing arguments, the prosecution asked this jury, which was a very diverse jury, to believe their own eyes in this case. Was that the tipping point in the end?
Well, I mean, listen, I think that the jury knew what the video was, right? Everyone has seen the video at varying points. It's been impossible to miss it, whether you want to look at it or not, over the past year. But I think that's where the case started, right? We saw the emotional component, the civilian witnesses, the people that were out there in front of Cup Foods trying to help George Floyd to get these officers off of him. But as the case really developed, and I think really where the prosecution won the case specifically on the second-degree murder count was through the medical testimony. There were numerous medical experts that came in and really left no stone unturned, pointing the finger at Chauvin's actions as a substantial factor causing the loss of life.
David, we now live in a world where smartphones, body cameras, security cameras, there are so many ways to record. They're everywhere. This case was so very different even than what we saw 30 years ago with the video recording of Rodney King. So how much is video evidence now changing our current justice system?
It has changed it. I mean, body-worn cameras, what we've seen, especially even here in San Diego in the last couple of years, has changed how we handle cases, how the prosecutor will handle cases, how the police department handles any complaints internally. And I think in a case like this, Steve, what we've seen is the power of video, the power of body-worn camera. And I question whether without that evidence, without the body-worn camera evidence, without the cell phone video, would Derek Chauvin have even been brought to trial? And certainly would have been convicted, and certainly would have been convicted of second-degree murder. I'm really not too sure. And I think as a defense attorney, I think we're glad, for better or worse on each individual case, it's the best thing, it's the right thing to have that type of coverage available.
Very quickly, David, I want to close with what type of impact do you think that will have on the upcoming 3 trials for the other officers?
Well, it's going to have a big impact. And it's going to have a big impact really in 2 ways. First, as far as what Derek Chauvin's sentence is going to be. In all likelihood, assuming that sentencing doesn't get continued, they will know what he is going to receive from the judge. So they'll have that as a ceiling and understand that if they get convicted, it's probably going to be a significant amount less than that. Secondarily, if the prosecution wasn't able to convict Chauvin of murder or manslaughter, well, it'll be pretty hard to get the other 3 officers on an aiding and abetting theory if Chauvin ultimately was walked by the jury. So this conviction was very, very important to aid the prosecution of the other 3 officers in August.
Great insight. David Shapiro, we appreciate your expertise. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Coming up at 5:30, we're going to be joined by Francine Maxwell, the leader of the NAACP San Diego chapter. She's going to talk about the significance of the verdict for this country.
In other news, police now say they arrested the suspect in a deadly shooting today at a grocery store in New York. We first brought you the breaking news about the shooting and manhunt for that gunman on ABC 10 News at 11. Police say Gabriel Wilson works or used to work at the store in West Hampstead. That's on Long Island. According to police, Wilson went into a manager's office and shot 3 people. 1 died, the other 2 are in the hospital. Investigators have not yet revealed a suspected motive.
And now to the coronavirus. New developments in the pause on the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. The European Union is resuming use of the shot. However, they are putting a warning on it, saying they may have found a link between the vaccine and a handful of cases of rare blood clots. The EU says it wants to let people know the very slight risk, but they also say the benefits of the shot far outweigh the downside. Here in the United States, the CDC says it is still looking into any connection between the vaccine and the blood clots.
We are working through and adjudicating them and verifying whether they do in fact reflect a true case. And that will be the work of the CDC this week, as well as the FDA.
The FDA has also asked a Baltimore plant that makes the J&J vaccine to suspend production. It has not revealed why. And here are the latest numbers on coronavirus in San Diego County. More than 250 new cases were reported today. That brings our total to more than 275,000. And there were no new deaths, so that number remains at 3,674.
Chula Vista has its first legal marijuana dispensary. Grasshopper Cannabis opened its doors today after years of debate and ultimately getting the approval of voters. The store is paving the way for others to sell legally for the first time in the South Bay.
We're welcoming everybody with open arms today.
Open for just hours, and already Grasshopper Dispensary in Chula Vista was busy.
This is a big win for everybody today, and I mean, you know, we're not going to let you down. We're proud to be able to open our doors today on 4/20. It's not a better day for it.
CEO Andres Camberos is from Chula Vista and says his new store brings 20 to 30 new jobs to the city and will give a portion of proceeds to local community programs. The grand opening attended by Chula Vista Mayor Mary Salas.
I know it was a really long process. It took us many, many years to make sure that our ordinance was a good, strong ordinance and it guaranteed the safety and health of everyone.
Commercial cannabis operations were made legal in Chula Vista in 2018 when voters approved Measure Q. That was 2 years after California legalized marijuana in 2016. But Measure Q does set a limit of only 12 cannabis retail operations within Chula Vista, with each council district only allowed to have a maximum of 3 locations.
Here we are 2 years later, extremely excited to be here and extremely excited to welcome you.
Both city leaders and police are hoping the legal shops like Grasshopper will offer an alternative to illegal shops, which the city has been trying to crack down on in recent years. Last year alone, dozens of illegal dispensaries were raided and shut down. Camberos says his operation is a safe place for cannabis users to get their products.
We have something for the recreational user, the medical user, for the heavy user.
Grasshopper Dispensary is located in an industrial area on Trousdale Drive in Chula Vista.
A popular beach in Solana Beach is closed for the next several weeks. It's all part of a first-of-a-kind sand replenishment project. Our ABC 10 News reporter Rachel Bianco has the work that's underway at Fletcher Cove.
Kim Kelly has been running the beaches in Del Mar and Solana Beach for 20 years. She's always mindful of the fragile bluffs.
I really only run the beach on low tide. Of course, I'm down there on my just enjoying the day. I'll stay away from the cliffs for sure.
Preserving the beaches and protecting the bluffs is the goal of a major sand replenishment project just launched at Fletcher Cove.
Instead of armoring with walls, to armor, so to say, with extra sand that would prevent the ocean from eroding the cliffs so much that it aids in the continual erosion and collapse of some of those bluffs.
It's the city's first sand compatibility opportunistic use program project, meaning that sand from a nearby development is used at no cost to taxpayers. 25,000 cubic yards of sand will be delivered during 3,000 dump truck trips. The sand is coming from a construction project a few blocks away on South Sierra.
Either they take it to the dump or to another project of theirs, or if it's quality sand, they can put it on our beaches.
The beach at Fletcher Cove and parking lot will be closed weekdays until 5 p.m.
We love our beaches, but it's a weekday closure. So we get the weekends and we're lucky to live where we do. So that's my theory.
The project is expected to take 7 weeks, with the beach opening in time for Memorial Day. In Solana Beach, Rachel Bianco, ABC 10 News.